money to sometimes feed them. And that was the hardest part.
Yeah.
But I always managed, even if it was just rice and beans again. But God started moving, and I always managed. We always had food, and that's when they finally started knowing what a restaurant was.
Oh.
But it was hard because there was one time Milo's dad was always very hard on helping me out with cash because, well, you know, yes, they give you child support, but your kids have other needs.
Yes,
you know?
of course, yes.
And I had insurance because I worked for the state, but at
Yeah.
one time he got real sick on me, and I didn't have the money for the medicines.
Yeah.
So I had reached out, and he's like, well, that's why I gave you child support. And I'm like, I know, but. So anyway, I didn't make a big stink. And in 2011, he murdered her. So that was a hard news. That was another hard thing when they told me. I remember I was mad at her because she had left, and the girls were at home for Christmas break. And my daughter calls me and says, Mom, there's cops knocking on the door. What do I do? I said, just don't answer the door. Just, you're fine. You know, if they don't know anybody's there, they'll go away. So she said, okay. So she hangs up. She calls him back 10 minutes and said, Mom, they're knocking on the window. They're looking through the window. I said, just don't open the door. I said, but there's cops everywhere. And I'm like, oh, my God. And I had just gotten back because I had had surgery. I didn't want to leave. So I called Noel, and I was like, I can't leave. I'm busy. And well, he was closer. So I said, okay, forget it. So I told my boss, I have to go. And I went to hug him, and I couldn't even breathe. I was crying so hard. And so I finally calmed down, and we sat down, and the cops were asking him, well, what do you know? And so he started telling them, well, I think it was this person. And I'm like, are you sure? And he's like, yeah, I think so. And so and that's when it hit me, and I said, she just bought a car 2 weeks ago. I said, and he goes, where? And I said, I think it's from Mansira, and it has a GPS tracker because she had bad credit. Mm-hmm. And so they right away got on the phone to Mansira, and he took the car. So they tracked him.
Well, good.
So, and they finally found him. And, well, he had killed someone else before. He killed her. I'm going to go through this again. We had just caught up in the medical, and I said, I don't want to be here by myself. And so he's like, you're going to be fine. You're going to be fine. And that was we had to start all over. Then COVID hit. And the good part was I would go with him, and I would tell because my husband would just start talking, and he'd forget. And I was the one that would always tell the devil, well, what about this? What about that? Why is he doing this? Why is this happening to him? Well, can't we do this? Because, I would read and stuff. Mm-hmm. Well, when COVID hit, I couldn't go in with him.
You couldn't go in with him?
I couldn't go in with any of his doctors, and I hated that because I knew he wasn't telling them what needed to be said, or did I trust that he was telling me what they were telling him?
Yeah.
Because he didn't want me to feel bad. So, after that, things just started going bad. And so I would pray, and I got to heal him. When Milo calls me, he says, Mom, I'm going to kill myself. I can't do it. And he's telling me he's going to kill himself, and I'm crying drastically. And I'm saying, God, I just lost my daughter. I can't lose my son as well. So I'm crying. And so Pastor Will says, what's going on? And I said, he's calling me. He says he's going to kill himself. And he says, get his number, or give me his number and give him my name. Tell him I'm going to call him. I'm going to call him, and I need to talk to him. So I told him, I said, look, don't do anything. He said, Pastor Will's going to call you. And so he left, and he called him, and then he called me back. He says, I'm going to meet him at a cafe or some place where they serve coffee, and I'm going to put him up in a motel or something. He put him up for 2 days, I think. I don't remember. And next day he called me, and he said,
welcome back to another episode of LifeSpeaksPodcast.com. Thank you so much for joining us. We want to give a shout out to the Choosing Hope Foundation. Go to the website choosinghopefoundation.org. See what they're doing over there, man. Wrapped around prison ministries, just doing big things out there. Check it out if you want to donate, or if you just want to see, or if you just want to just check it out and see what can happen. Hey, just see what can happen. Check out LifeSpeaksPodcast.com and be up on the info about our podcast. And thank you so much for watching. If you want to donate, you have an option on there. Next, the Potter's House, GRA.com with our church. the Universal Church in Universal City, Greater Randolph area, 2025 Universal City Boulevard. Come and check us out, see how God's moving. Let's check out the website. Once again, it's thepottershousegra.com. And man, just see how God is just moving over there. And it is awesome. Like, subscribe to our podcast, ring the bell so you get all the notifications. And thank you so much for joining us.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Life Speaks Podcast. I'm your host, just Jesse.
And Liz.
Lizzie Lizard, my co-host, amen, or other host. So we have another special guest for you, another special podcast that we're going to be kicking off here today.
Yes.
I want to introduce someone very special to me, family, my grandma, Pat.
Yes.
Amen. You may also know her as, Miss Pat. As she goes by the church, elder leader in our church. Also, you may know Pastor Camilo, his mother, or if you know Posey's grandma,
Yes.
Posey's great grandma. Amen. But a pillar in the church, leader in the church, long-standing member in the church, and we can trace back quite a few people back to Miss Pat. Amen. So it's awesome to have you on the show, Miss Pat.
Yes,
It's awesome
thank
to have
you
you on the
for coming.
podcast. And we just want to kick it off how we always do. If you could just go ahead and take us back to the beginning, wherever you would like to start, as far back as you can go, and just tell us a little bit about you, and we'll get started on this journey.
Well, I was born in Corpus to, of course, my mom and dad. I had 3 siblings, 2 brothers and a sister. We were always poor. My dad was literally illiterate. He didn't write. He didn't read. So most of his jobs were like dishwasher, things very low pay.
Mm-hmm.
So we always struggled there, and, it was just hard because we had to do without a lot. So that was where I started hard. And like I was telling Liz earlier, I said, I think the devil's been after me since I was born, because I remember being I don't remember being the baby, but my mom telling me that when I was a baby, like around 6 months, I got a real bad case of bronchitis, and I wound up in the hospital. She said, we didn't think you were going to make it. They came and read your rights, and
Oh, wow.
we were, had already given up, and
Yeah.
well, here I am. So God said,
She's
no.
a fighter. She's a
But
fighter.
I feel that God, well, of course, the devil knew what God had planned for me in my life, what I was going to do, serving him and stuff. So that was the first time I guess we would say, tried to attack me. But I don't really have. I was pretty good kid. My parents sheltered us really bad. We couldn't go out at the same house. We didn't ever have a phone, so they just kept an eye on us. We weren't, like I said, we weren't allowed to go outside and play. So I couldn't get in any trouble.
So you would go to school, and then when you come home, it was just stay inside, no play outside in the yard or anything?
Yep. And we didn't even have a TV at a time because, like I said, we didn't have much money. So we barely, we would eat, yes, rice, beans. And I guess that's why I don't like a lot of things, because it was just rice, beans, and tortillas. So,
Yeah.
so we struggled, lived pretty much all my life growing up in the projects. So, but I always said I didn't want to be a statistic, because all my, little girlfriends from school, their families were like the cycles, they would have kids and they would stay in the projects and say, I don't want that. I want to get out of the projects. I want to do better for my kids. But, well, needless to say, I got pregnant when I was 17. So my parents made me get married because that's just how it was back then.
That's what you
back
do,
then, there was no pregnancy in the high schools.
Mm-hmm.
They had one school that you would go to if you were pregnant, and that I didn't want to go to, so I did drop out. It was my senior year, second half. So I dropped out, and I had my daughter in the summer. I was already 18, and decided that I needed to go back, got my diploma, so that my husband at the time, because we did get married, so, she wasn't born out of wedlock, she was conceived out of wedlock. So we stayed married, even though I didn't really love him, but it was more like a shotgun wedding. So did that, and was working for Whataburger. I met Milo's dad. So we started kind of messing around, and I was still married, but I didn't have no interest in that wedding. Like, I wanted out, but I didn't know how to do it. So eventually we got caught. We're not supposed to. And so, I got rid of him like that. We got divorced, and there was, there was a lot of prejudice back in the day when I was there, because when I went to junior high, like, it was maybe 75% black and maybe 10.
Can you push the mic closer to you?
And then 10% like Hispanic, and about maybe maybe another 10% white.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So we would have riots. So the blacks and the Hispanics would have a lot of riots. So they would always tell us, we're letting the white kids leave first. They would let us out in increments, and then they let us go home. And I had to walk like an hour home. Always had to walk everywhere. So, and then they would get left. So I went through a lot of that. So I got pregnant, and my little girl's father was white. And so when I met them, they would always make comments about Hispanics, and I had to go through that. And
his side of the family?
Yeah. And they even offered me money to have an abortion.
Really?
I said no. I told him, I'm going to have my baby whether you're in it or not. So, we turned 18, so we got married. So, and we went on, and they learned to come around and stuff. And so then I met Milo's dad, and so we split up, and, I'm lusted over Milo's dad. I was in love. So his mom, because he had a single parent, she didn't like me at all, because I had already had a kid, and I had been married, and I think he was 17, I was 19. It's like I wasn't a virgin, so I wasn't good enough for him. So it's like, okay, whatever. So we got married anyway. Then I came out pregnant, and I had Milo. I was 21, I think. So when Milo turned 2, we split up, because he was a womanizer. He used to like being out there with women. So we split up, and it was hard for me I struggled, like to pay the rent,
So
buy them clothes.
You're 22, 23 now, and,
on my
and
own.
2 kids. Yeah.
So I struggled a lot. And at that time, I've always known about God, because I did my communion. My parents were Catholic, or my mom, because my dad didn't have no religion or anything. But my mom was the one that would push us, and she'd send us to church, and she'd stay home. But,
are you serious?
But me and my sister would walk. We walked, and she goes, let's not go in. We would sit out on the steps till church was over, and then we'd go home. But yeah, so I did my communion. So I've always known there was a God. I've always craved to learn more about him. And so I've always asked him to help me. So I've always been a hustler, so I would work up to 2 jobs to provide for my kids. And I am grateful that my mom always took care of them. I didn't have to pay for daycare.
I was going to ask, while you were working.
Yes, but she would always tell me, I'm going to help you, but I'm only going to take care of them while you work. If you want to go out and do your own things, I'm not going to take care of them.
Okay.
So, that was good enough for me.
Yes,
so,
no, it helped, yeah.
Yeah, so I just struggled, and got divorced, met some friends, of course, no gooders. I was in the world. I moved to Austin with this one guy who became my friend, and he was gay, so I didn't have nothing to worry about. So we moved with him, and I started working over there. Again, struggling. I didn't have a car. I don't know, just, what entered my mind. I want to leave.
Yeah.
So I moved, and then I started seeing this guy, got pregnant. I said, I can't do this. I can't afford this baby. So I did have an abortion. I had an abortion, and then so went back to work and everything, got pregnant again from the same person. So this time I said, I can't do that. I have to have it. But where I was working, I had an accident, and I busted my finger, and I was in so much pain, and they couldn't give me anything. So I think the shock of all the pain that I went through, I think I lost a baby. I was stillborn. I decided that I was going to go back home because I needed help. So I called my dad, and my dad didn't hesitate, came, picked me up, took me home. And so I hadn't seen a doctor, so I thought I was like 5, maybe 6 months pregnant. And I went straight to apply for Medicaid and got it, and went to go see the doctor, and that's when he gave me the news, your baby's dead,
Oh my, so your body didn't start cramping and start trying to.
So they admitted me right away. and did the induce, and then the DNC and and all that. So right after that, I went back to work because I was working at a Sun Harvest in Austin, and I tried to get in with Sun Harvest in Corpus. But the guy that was running the place says, "Oh, you're pregnant?" And I said, "Yeah." And he's like, "Well, we don't have any openings right now."
Are you serious?
Yeah. So when I lost a baby and everything, I called back and I said, "Look, I'm not pregnant anymore, and I really need to get back to work." And he hired me.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I went, and I've always worked. So I went to go work, and I really enjoy it. It was in the meat market, and I enjoyed doing that. And so I met a guy through there. I started talking to him, and he was divorced, but he would wear his wedding ring. So to me, he was married because I didn't know him. Mm-hmm. So one day I needed a ride home. I never had a car. And so I was waiting for my dad, and my dad was taking forever. And I was kind of far from where I lived. And he said, "Oh, well, let me give you a ride home." And I was like, I don't know, because, I'm scared. And I've never been like that, like just any guy. So I trusted him and said, "Well, okay." So I remember him passing my house. I'm like, "Oh, you just passed my house." And he took me to his apartment. He said, "Look at my place. I don't have a wife. I'm by myself. I have my 2 kids." And so anyway, we got to know each other. We talked and everything. And he was a Pentecostal. So that's how it all started. He was Pentecostal, and he went to this church where, it was really Pentecostal, where the ladies couldn't wear pants.
Okay,
couldn't wear makeup,
the long hair, the dresses.
Yeah, and this was like many moons ago. So needless to say, we became friends, and he's how I learned about talking in tongues. And
okay.
Yeah, he would talk in tongues, and I would think he was weird, and I didn't know anything about that. So and he started witnessing to me and stuff. He's the one who started witnessing, telling me about Christ. And at that time, like everybody, I knew about Christ, but I wanted to get to know him better. So through him, there was another guy that worked with us. And of course, he's not going to let me go to his church because, he didn't want nobody to even know that he would talk to me. So there was another guy that worked there, and he says, "You can go with Conrad." He goes to Altar of Prayer, which was a Assemblies of God.
Oh, okay.
He goes, him and his family go there. And so he gave me all the info, and I said, I want to try it. So I was living with my sister, and I didn't have a car. So I asked my brother-in-law, "Can you drive me to church on Sunday?" He goes, yeah. My brother-in-law's always done a lot for all of us. So he drove me, and he sat there with me and everything.
Oh, so he went to church with you?
Yeah, and it was strange, but I went without my kids because I wanted to, see what it was all about. First.
Yeah.
And it made me feel good. Of course, I didn't know anything about the Holy Spirit. So, I didn't understand some of the songs they were singing, because they do sing a lot of the songs we sing, the older songs. Uh-huh. But some of the songs they would sing, like, "Feed Me, Jesus, Feed Me," I'm like, why are they singing that? Like, what are they talking about? But I kept going. And eventually I brought the kids, and they didn't want to go to school. And I liked it because they did have school. They had...
like Sunday school?
Yeah, we would start our Bible studies, say maybe like about 11 to 12, and the kids would go to class. And they had all kinds of age groups, right? Yes. All the way to the teens. And then when we start worship later, they would change classes and go to... So they went through class the whole morning. Two different classes. So I liked that because they learned a lot. So
yeah.
So that's where I first started, and I got saved. But I tell you what, I didn't speak in tongues till I started at the Potter's house. But I could feel the presence, and I felt like I was filled. But I was so shy and embarrassed, and my pastor's wife would always tell me, "Miss Pat, I know you have the Holy Spirit in you, but you just need to give it utterance, and you just won't."
So would they lay hands and pray for the Holy Spirit?
Oh, yes, it was exactly. Yeah. And the only thing
you were just holding back. You were just holding back.
Yes, and that was me. I was like, "Oh, I can't let anybody."
Yeah.
But that was then, when I first started. So, but I would always feel the Spirit. And so I remember when I first got saved, since I was by myself, I constantly read and watched TBN back in the days. Was old. Yeah, that's all I had. I didn't have cable. So it was TBN and my Bible reading and stuff. And I'd go to bed, and sometimes I feel my bed like levitating. And I couldn't get up, and I couldn't get up. And it was like, I couldn't believe that was happening. But I was like, geez. And I couldn't say Jesus until I'd say it, it'd break. And I'd get up.
Oh, my goodness.
I would feel scratching of feet. Yeah, so the devil has been after me, but
yeah,
he never got through me. So, yeah, I experienced a lot of that, and constantly praying for my kids because I knew the devil was after us. But and I went through a lot of during that time also, you know. And then I did once I started going to church, a lot of things changed. You know, I didn't become rich, but I was able to offer more to my kids. And the church that I was going to was just like our church. Everybody was friendly. They welcomed me with open arms. I made real good friends. They would pick me up because, again, I didn't have a car.
Uh-huh.
And sometimes I'd spend the night with them to take me to church the next day. And when I didn't have a car, I did have a clunker, they would come pick me up. My pastor's wife was real good about that, too. They'd come pick me up.
Because you still lived with your sister?
No, by that time I was by myself already.
Okay.
I didn't live a long time with my sister.
Oh, okay.
I pretty much was very independent. I always wanted to do things on my own. But again, I struggled as a single parent. But when I started working for the state, it changed because I started meeting people that knew things because I was naive. And I was telling them that I was only getting $100 each for child support. And they're like, what? Are you crazy?
That's it, yeah.
And I'm like, well, I don't have money to pay an attorney to go back to court. And they're like, you don't need to do that. And they started educating me. No, you just go to the attorney generals and you just pay $25 and they'll take your case. And I'm like, really? And they said, yeah, well, by the time I went, it was free. So I took them both back to court. And and I got more money. I got $250, I think it was for for Milo, and then $375 for my daughter. So yeah, I went back and I started educating once I started working there because, you know, I had to go to school for that again back in the boonies, in the 1980s. Women couldn't get a lot of jobs. So I literally had to go to vocational school to get a certificate from the state of Texas to be able to apply for the state. So I did that, and it was hard working and doing that. But God saw me through that.
Were you still working 2 jobs, or was the state enough that you were able to?
Yeah, I was working at that meat market or at Sun Harvest. And my mom helped me, and it was hard because I go to school 8 to 3, go to work, get out of work, go do homework. And but I wanted an 8 to 5 job. I would pray, you know, because I want to be at home with my kids when they get home from school. Yeah. I want to help them with their homework, you know, do whatever I need to for them. So God blessed me when I retired. I went to go apply, and even then, the lady who was a job placement lady, she was trying to discourage me from applying with the state. And my cousin has always worked with the state, and he told me, don't give up. Apply for the state. You don't let her tell you anything. Well, later on, I found out this lady was fired by the state. That's why she
already had an axe to grind.
So needless to say, I stood, you know, on my grounds, and I applied. And they told me, well, we're not hiring, but we'll keep your application. And so not even 6 months, they called me for the interview, and I went and did it. And then I never heard anything, and I was so disappointed. And I did a little jobs, and then I was still working at Bill Miller's now, full-time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so after that, it was like, had been 9 months, and I was living in the projects with my kids, and I wanted better, so I would pray. And then one day I had gotten home from dropping the kids off at school, and my phone was ringing, and I went and answered, and it was the state 9 months later. And she said, we were going to hire you, but they put the hiring freeze, so we couldn't call you. Here 9 months later, do you still need a job? Well, yeah. So I started with the state and been there since.
How when you first started with state, how old was Camilo and your daughter?
Oh gosh, I can't even remember. But
were they like teenagers, or they're still elementary?
I think they were. Well, I don't know. I want to say maybe between 8 and 10.
Okay, so they were still pretty young.
Yeah, but because I was just telling Milo the other day, I said, you know, your dad tried to report me to Child Protective Services. And I said, I don't think I ever told you. I said, but I was working there. And so he was always trying to take Milo away from me. So he called me one day. He says, I'm going to report you because you're leaving the kids at home by themselves and da-da-da-da. I'm like, dude, do you know where I work at? I say, I work for Child Protective Services. So it was a letdown for him because I had already checked with my supervisors, like what age limit
Yes,
can I need my kids, and then they told me, and I said, no, you're okay. So I had already done all that.
Yeah,
so.
yeah.
But I worked with them, and I learned a lot from that, seeing all the things. And I was embarrassed when I first started because all the wordings they would use was like, what are those words mean? I would
they
ask
were
my
big
coworkers,
words. Yeah,
and they
yeah.
were, words where it's sexually related stuff.
Yes, yeah.
And they would laugh at me, you don't know what that word means? And I'm like, no, I've never heard of it. And so they would tell me, and I would get embarrassed because I was naive to a lot of things. But, like I was telling, I think it was somebody at church, Val, I'm not sure. It's like, I never really had any addictions. Like, maybe I drank a little bit, and then I stopped. I did smoke weed maybe 5 times. I mean,
Yeah,
I never
it was
got
nothing.
addicted to anything.
Yeah.
Nothing. I'd give it up real easy. And then once I had the kids, I dedicated to the kids, and then I got saved, and I never had any addictions.
Yeah,
So my only was bringing up the kids, and I did want a companion in my life, but I had forgotten I made that pact with Christ about, you help me raise the kids. But the girls were real good with me at church. They would pray for me, and we had a softball team, and when we finished playing baseball, they'd all get in a circle, and they put me in the middle, and they would pray for me that God would send me a husband. They would take care of me.
Yeah, yeah.
Because they were all married. So,
yeah, they were contending for you.
So, so it took them forever. but I think I was very fortunate, when I met Noel. So, but that was a God thing.
Yes, yeah.
It took me 20 years being single, but I struggled through those. But God saw me through it once I got saved. Things became easier for me, people at the church, like I said, they were like a church where I'm in, except that they were Assemblies of God. But my pastor had his own construction company, and his boys would work. And but he had money, but he never, he used old suits, and he would drive old LTDs. He was very close with the investigators and the cops. And he did his own ministry. We wouldn't do outreaches and like we do street preaching.
Yeah.
He would do all that. He would go to the hospitals. He would go to the jails, and he would do all that. So
on his own.
Yes,
on his own,
and and maybe with his sons. I'm not sure, but they were real good people, and now they've both gone home. But I'm glad I started there because it's kind of like me being over here, except that we're not Assemblies of God.
Yeah.
But same songs. But and then I met Noel, and my life changed again. Because
real quick before we go into that next one, I just had a few questions because I don't want to interrupt you because you're on a roll. You were going. I don't want to mess up your train of thought. But before we get into, because I know you said there's the next chapter, and I know it truly is a next chapter. But I know you covered a lot. You covered it fast. I know there was a lot in there from the beginning. Start over from the beginning. No, I'm just kidding. No, my first question was when you were kind of from childhood to single mother. So you kind of said it, and I kind of even forgot it was this way. My mom kind of said that or had brought that up before too. But like you're saying, like back in the day, they sent pregnant women to like a whole different school, and there was no teenage pregnancies, and you wouldn't see all kinds of stuff like that.
They weren't allowed to go.
Nowadays, oh wow, they were okay.
That's why they had that school. It's called TAMS.
Yep.
Teenage something motherhood, or I don't remember the name of it, but I didn't want to go.
So my question for you was, because you talked about your childhood, you talked about being sheltered, you talked about them just keeping you inside. Is there anything that you could identify that kind of, I don't know what's the word, that kind of led to that, especially for that time, abnormal behavior as far as the pregnancies and the marriages or anything?
Just being a kid, wanting the desire, to have.
Yeah, to have a relationship. Yeah, to be loved, to be cared for.
That's what, I saw everybody else doing or heard about, and
you
want to try it,
Yeah,
okay. So there was nothing like major or anything.
No,
They're just
actually, like my parents, they were married until, they both passed. They, my dad would drink. I think the worst part was toward the end, my dad retired and he started drinking, and on the weekends he would split and go drink. But I can't tell you like there was anything bad that they would. I got only got whipped one time because I ran away. And what happened is my little brother, you know, we were out with the friends there in the projects, and he was, and I was giving him a ride on the handlebars.
Yeah, your bike.
And my mom always said, "You better not let anything happen to him." And of course, he fell and busted his lip. And I said, "Oh, that's it. They're gonna kill me." So I was with this little girl, and she's going, "Well, let's run away." And so we ran away, and we literally spent the night in an empty home, in an empty house.
Serious?
Yeah, like I broke down.
Yeah, yeah.
And we stayed there, and believe it or not, we were two little boys, but you know, we were kids. And,
Yeah. It was all innocent.
And my parents called the cops, of course, and I think her parents. And so the next morning we got it. She goes, "Oh, let's go to my uncle's house. You know, let's go eat breakfast over there." And well, they already knew. So we show up and everything, and then the cops show up.
Yes,
and they took me home. Oh, that was the whipping. That's the only whipping I remember ever getting from my dad.
So your mom and dad were there. Mm-hmm. There was love in the family.
Well, the only thing about that, no. I mean, I felt the love. My mom was very good with us. She was a stay-home mom. But my mom and my dad never really told us, "I love you." I just knew it. They were not people that would always say, "Love you," like we do, you know.
Yes, yeah.
My mom died, and I don't think she ever told me she loved me, but I knew she did.
Yes,
We had a bond, and she did a lot for me. But I think her anger with me, that I was very open, straightforward with her, and she didn't like that because my other brothers and sisters would not try to like hurt her feelings or whatever. Well, I had gotten saved, and one day I was very mad because I know Milo was telling me they don't treat me as like they do Arlene and da-da-da-da. So I had confronted her, and we got into a little argument. And then one time she told me, she goes, "You ought to be thankful." She said, "You wouldn't be where you're at if it weren't for me." And I said, "Oh, no." I said, "I wouldn't be where I'm at if it weren't for Christ." And she was so mad at me. But it was the truth. And I said, "Look, I appreciate everything you've done for me, and I thank you for it." Yeah. I said, I'm thankful. But Christ has gotten me this far. You know, I was already saved, going to working and doing good for ourselves. So.
Yes, yeah.
But no, I can't say that there was anything. The only thing that came from my childhood was wanting to better my life and my kids' life. But I didn't have the anger that we were always poor. And I think maybe I only remember 2 Christmas gifts because we never really had money. It was a tumbelina and a little kitchen. Back then, they were like aluminum hollow, and only the door would open. That's how old. And those are the only 2 Christmas gifts I ever remember when I was young.
Yeah.
But, no. Nothing really let me just being curious, being a female. That's just what happened, being curious.
Yeah.
But no, I cannot say. But most of mine, like I said, we struggled. I did get out of the projects. I started working for the state. I tell the girls back when I started, my beginning salary was $956 a month because I get paid on a monthly basis. And I know that when we graduated from the school, they told us, don't expect to make a lot of money. It's your first secretarial job. You're probably only going to get paid $600. And so when I saw $900, I said, whoa, that's more than what I thought.
Yeah.
So I started with the state, and again, back in the days, we had no computers. It was all IBM.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah.
Carbon paper. We had yellow out, white out, green out. So I learned to type.
He's all, what?
Yeah.
Green out? Yeah.
Yeah.
Over my head.
So that's how far back I remember working with the state. So I was there when they brought in the Apple computers at first.
Yeah.
That big old CompuServes.
Yeah.
Well, now we have laptops, so.
I got phones.
Yeah. So all that is,
Isn't that crazy? Just how technology, because our other podcasts, just how things have progressed to where they are, but like just even with Miss Pat, you know what I mean? Just where it's like it's gone so fast, you know what I mean? That It's like here she was with this and that. She's like, now we have laptops and smart computers, smartphones.
Yeah.
It's like, isn't that crazy?
My most struggles were not having enough. Like when I had the kids, and before I started I had already just started with the States. Like, just having enough money to sometimes feed them. And that was the hardest part.
Yeah.
But I always managed, even if it was just rice and beans again. But God started moving, and I always managed. We always had food, and that's when they finally started knowing what a restaurant was.
Oh.
But it was hard because there was one time Milo's dad was always very hard on helping me out with cash because, well, you know, yes, they give you child support, but your kids have other needs.
Yes,
know?
of course. Yeah.
And I had insurance because I worked for the state, but at
Yeah.
one time he got real sick on me, and I didn't have the money for the medicines.
Yeah.
So I had reached out, and he's like, well, that's why I gave you child support. And I'm like, I know, but. So anyway, I didn't make a big stink, and he was married already, so I think his wife was more giving because I talked to her. And so I don't know how it was, but I was telling him, you know, well, okay, whatever. I had torn up couches that they had given me and everything. I would make the best of what I had.
Yes. Yeah.
But so I don't know how it happened. So he showed up at my doorstep, and he saw how I lived. You know, I don't have the best of the world, but I'm working. I have a
Yes.
decent
Yeah.
clunker because all I had was clunkers. And so I guess he finally started feeling bad. And well, so I had taken him for the child support, and they had told me don't accept any cash from him, you know, because they don't want to
Yeah.
mess the whole court thing. So I was kind of desperate because Milo was sick. So he gave me some money, and so I said, all right. And then I think he didn't trust me. Like he thought I was going to use the money for something else.
Mm-hmm.
So he left, and as soon as he left, I didn't have, I don't know, my car wasn't working or whatever. I got the kids dressed and I said, let's go to the store. I had, HEB was my neighbor, so we walked over there and got what he needed. I got him soup, orange juice, and whatever. And on the way back home, I saw him pull up. And so he was always the type that would buy him stuff, clothes and everything, but it had to stay at his house. Couldn't bring it home.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he showed up, and he brought I think it was his bike, and he brought blankets, and he brought, you know, I think he saw that I wasn't lying to him.
Yeah.
And so, you know, after that, you know, I think he started hoping a little bit more, but I always struggled in that department. It was hard until, you know, but I always had the faith that I knew God was going to see me through, and he did.
Yes. Yeah.
He did. And sometimes people at church would just come out and give me money. I'm like, no, I don't want that. I would be very embarrassed to take
it. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but they said, no, you're going to rob me from a blessing. You need to take it.
Absolutely. Yes.
Like, okay. So I did, and I said, well, I needed it for this or that or whatever. So, but God was always there for me.
God's timing. So, yeah.
And then one time I had a lady, and I was telling her, she was also by herself. She was married. She had a little girl, and she lived with her mom. And she worked for the city, and we would talk, and I said, yeah, I feel bad because I've never taken my kids for a good vacation. I said, like, even Astroworld back in the day. And so we're talking and everything. She goes, well, hey, let's go out to eat next Friday. I want to treat you. And it's like, yeah, okay. And I would always tell my kids, don't ask for anything. Whatever she orders, you know, we don't have the money.
Yeah.
So, and my kids were good until they hit the middle school. Mm-hmm. And so we went out and everything. She brought us back home, and I thanked her. And she says, I want to give you this envelope. And I'm like, no, don't do that. I'm not going to go out to eat with you no more if you keep doing that. So she said, no, I want to give it to you. God told me that I needed to give you this. And so Milo grabbed it, you know.
I'll take it, Mom.
And I said, all right. I said, you can't be doing this. Because she said, if you don't take it, I'm not going to, I don't know, she said, talk to you or take you out to eat or whatever. So Milo had the envelope, and she left. And again, I wasn't thinking anything. And, you know, she gave me whatever, $20-$30, you know.
Yeah.
So Milo said, Mom, can I open the envelope and see what's in there? And I said, yeah, mijo, go ahead. And we were watching TV. And so he starts 100, 200, 300, 400. Wow. And I was like, stop playing around. And I look, and he had all these hundreds. It was $1,000.
Wow.
So I know
thought he was messing around. You're like, all right, dude, be quiet. Those are ones.
I told him
100.
She worked for the city, and she had told me she had gotten paid. I said, oh, my God, she gave me the wrong envelope. That was my first thought.
Oh, yeah.
So I didn't know where she lived, but I knew more or less. So I said, get in the car. So there I go to her house. And so I knocked on the door, and I said, her name was Amparo. I said, Miss Amparo, you gave me the wrong envelope. She goes, no, that was the only envelope I had. I said, no, that can't be right. I said, You just got paid. And she's like, that's what God spoke to me to give to you. I'm like,
Wow.
no. And I said, take your kids out. And so we did. We went on a little vacation to, I think it was Houston, to the Astro and took them to see the Astros. And
Nice.
so God's always been good.
Yeah.
He has always provided for me. So nobody can tell me that there is not a Christ out there because I have proof.
Yes. Time and time again, right?
Yes.
Right? Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so you were saying now you're like, when my kids got into junior high, what was that?
Well, because Milo, didn't know a lot of the stuff he would do, but I would always pray and I would tell him, because they would read the Bible every day, sit him down and I say, okay, you need to do your homework and then you need to read the Bible. And if it's a short chapter, you need to read two. And don't be cheating because I'm going to ask you questions. So they would read and then I would ask them a few questions. And so I kind of always trusted them, but I would still pray, and I would say, God, I can't be with them 24 hours, but, just watch over them. Let me know if they're doing, and I always caught Milo, whatever he would get into. But he started hanging with this little boy, and he started skipping. And this little boy's parents the father worked in the refinery, so they had money. They bought him a truck, and he was already, I think, 15, 16. He had a truck, and that's where he started skipping. And they would take off. Yeah. So, and then I guess he says they started doing drugs. And so at this time, I didn't really know all this,
Yeah.
I would just pray for them. And then he was going to, my thing was that, I was trying to raise him in the church, but when he would go visit his dad, I didn't know, I didn't even know at the time. I knew they were worldly, and I knew they drank. But later on in the older years, he tells me, yeah, they used to go in the backyard and they would drink and they would literally fist fight, he would tell me. And they would cuss and all that. Of course, he saw all that. So it was very hard for me to bring him up in the church when they were showing him all that.
Right, yeah, when he was still being exposed to all this other stuff. Yeah.
But I still prayed for him. Yes. Because when he was 4 years old, he did tell me, you know what I'm going to be, Mom, when I grow up? And I go, what? He says, I'm going to be a pastor.
Oh, my goodness.
And so I said, okay, son, that's good. And I would think to myself, okay, he doesn't know what he's saying. He's 4.
Right, he's 4. What does he know?
Don't tell him what he's going to get into in the world. But
look at him, right?
So I'm
spoken
glad that
into
God
existence.
Honored, that. But he was the one that gave me the most problems when he started going out, doing the drugs, and then Marty came along. He got his girlfriend pregnant, and I remember he came in and he told me, and I was like, oh my God. He was graduating, and Marty's mom wasn't going to school. She had dropped out. And so I said, well, what are you going to do? And he says, well, I don't want to get married. And she's like, well, I don't want to get married. And I was like, so needless to say, I think she was being raised by her aunt.
Did you want him to get married?
At that time, he kept telling me no. And I said, well, why are they going to get married? They're going to turn around and split up. That's how I was thinking.
Okay.
So they didn't get married, but, and then they didn't last, not even, I don't know how long. They didn't last very long because he was into drugs.
Yes.
And so, and I was upset too because I know I would go see the baby and he had all his friends there, and they weren't allowed in my house. I would tell, that's why he left my house. Because I told him, I don't want your loser friends in my house. I would tell him, I don't want to see drugs in my house. I don't want none of that. I don't live that way and I don't want it in my house. So he left, That's why he left my house. But he had to learn the hard way because.
Nope, absolutely.
And then I know he got in trouble when he was in high school. Him and his friends were shooting a BB gun, and they one ricocheted and hit a little boy. So they got put on probation. And then he violated his probation. He winded up in jail. And he would be calling me. This is when I had just met Noel. And he would call me, and, Mom, you need to get me out. And I had already told him one time, you have one free ticket. So one time, the first time he got locked up for that, he says, I'm making money, get it from my account. And I bailed him out. I said, this is your one chance. So then he got picked up for violating his probation. And he was calling me, no, you need to get me. You need to come and get me. And I said, I'm not going to get you. I told you. You did not learn. And so I called the operator.
That's a hard phone call.
I call the operator and said, can you block all my calls from the jail?
Oh, my goodness. You even blocked him. Oh, wow.
That's tough.
Yes.
Very tough. Well, he didn't speak to me for a year, but
He was in jail.
No. He wasn't in there that long. I don't think.
I was like, I don't think he didn't talk to you because he was locked up.
I don't remember that part of Pastor Camilo's testimony.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of things.
No. Yeah. But Mama, he didn't tell us that in his testimony. I didn't talk to my mom.
Yeah, but and I remember that, and I would tell Noel, "Oh my God!" And he says, "Boy, no, you did the right thing." And I'm like, "Okay," but it was the right thing because I was not going to be one of those mothers that, I'm gonna go bail him out, and you're gonna.
Yeah.
I couldn't do that. I wanted him, and it was hard. Don't believe me, it was hard on me, But so and then he got out, and I would pray every day because I knew he was up to no good. And every morning I wake up, I always hear the news. And it's like, somebody got shot, somebody got killed. And I'm like, please let it not be him. Mm-hmm. Every morning I felt that way about him. And I would just leave him in God's hands. That's all I could do. But I remember, And then I lost my Mari. And I couldn't see her anymore. And that was a big heartache.
What was her name again? You said her name was Mari? Or her full name? Oh,
Mari.
You lost your Mari. Okay.
Yes, because I didn't get to see her when she turned 2. She yanked her from us, and I didn't get to see her no more. But she was just like Posey. Loved her to death. She was very happy and because they would leave her with me sometimes, and I would dance with her, and she'd be laughing. She was always a happy baby. So she reminds me so much of my Posey. And sometimes Milo couldn't go pick her up when it was his turn because they would get into it. So he said, "Mom, will you go pick up Mari for me?" And I said, "Sure." And I go pick her up, and her mom would be bringing her, and she wouldn't even get to the door, and she's already grabbing to come with me. Oh. And I would grab her, and her mom would get mad. "Wait a minute, you haven't even said bye to me yet, and you already want to go." And and she would just come with me, and I loved to have her. And then when she turned 2, we didn't see her anymore. Her mom wouldn't let us see her, but anyway. I see her now, so
yes,
and baby Posey reminds me so much of her because now I enjoy my Posey so much.
Yes,
she reminds me of when she was a baby.
So I got a quick question. If we can go back, you said when you met Noel. So so I know we were talking about Camilo and all of that, but can we go back to how you met?
Yeah, so I always worked. Again, I had bought every time my kids graduate, I didn't really have the cash, but I would make it a point to get them their senior ring, their Leatherman jacket, and it had to be leather and whatever gifts they wanted. And then I had to pay for it.
Yes.
But I felt it was worth for them at least finishing school because of all the other kids that I would see and single parents, they wouldn't make it. So I do that, and I said, okay, now I have to pay for it. So, but I didn't have an issue working, so I was by myself, so I started working at a convenience store.
To raise extra money.
To pay, and I was always very confident because I worked in a convenience store. I've always been a jack of all trades. I've worked at Pizza Hut restaurants, and I never shied back. I made money.
Yeah.
So I worked at, I ran a 7-Eleven. I was managing the 7-Eleven for 2 years, and then that's when I was married to Milo's dad. So I had that experience. So I went up to that Maverick down the street, and I said, "You're hiring?" He goes, "Yeah." I said, "When can I start?" And he's like, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, you need people. I can work for you." And he's like, "Well, what can you do?" And I said, "Well, I've ran 7-Elevens before, I was managing the 7-Eleven. He says, we started interviewing. Yeah, he said, "Well, you can start next week." So I started working, and then they sold to one of the Iranian people. So they switched me to another store down the street, and that's where I met Noel. And he would come in for coffee. And I know he's told everybody that, he says, "I knew she liked me from the start. She always had fresh coffee for me." But that was just me taking care of my customers because I knew my rate. He would always say,
"Nope, it was just for him, Miss Pat. It was just
like ISIS in the goodie bag. It's just work."
He's like, "I know it's for me.
Yeah.
It's always for me."
But I knew all my customers, they loved me because when they come in and say, "Okay, do you need another pack of your cigarettes?" And I already knew what they all wanted. Mm-hmm. So him and this other older man would come in at night. They were work the graveyard shifts for coffee. Now, the coffee sister, you notice when you go sometimes.
Yeah.
And I said, "Oh, they coming in at 11. I make a fresh pot of coffee." And so he would say, yeah, I knew you, whatever. And he would tell people, "Yeah, Juan Valdez brought us together." I don't know if he ever told you all that, but he would say that. So I met him, started talking. Of course, he's a talker. So, and we started talking. I didn't really have any adults to talk to. So everybody that I by that time, I wasn't going to church as much.
Oh,
I
how come?
wasn't going as often because I was working,
Oh, because you're working
trying
so
to
much.
pay all my bills.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I've always been one of those persons that my bills are going to get paid regardless. So I would go. I still have I still would go, but not as often. And I always prayed. I've never let go on my praying and my reading. So I met him and found out, he's a single parent. And my daughter was working at a theater.
Oh, okay.
And we would go see free movies. So one day we were talking, and I said, man, I'm tired of going by myself or with my daughter. I said, hey, you want to go see a movie? He said, see, you made the first move. And I said, wow. And I went up, and I had two little ones, and I'm like, oh, I don't know if I want to do that. My kids are gone.
Yeah, yeah.
But I prayed about it, and I just felt that they needed a mom to discipline them, to show about Christ. And that's what made me change my mind.
Yeah.
To start seeing him but yeah, that was hard to start all over again because the little one was still in diapers. She was 1 year and 8 months.
Oh, so she was a baby.
Yeah.
Oh,
So, and
my
the other one was
goodness.
4 years old.
Oh, wow.
But
yeah.
he didn't introduce him to me for the first 6 months
Oh, okay.
until
okay.
we started really talking and getting serious. And he was very respectful. He never made a move on me. We would go to the movies, and he would just hug me and kiss me on the cheek. And that was it.
Yeah, yeah.
He did that for many years. Many months, not years. And then finally, of course, I gave in. And we just kind of fell. And I never asked him his age, believe it or not. That was kind of dumb of me, but I just figured he had kids, had been married and divorced. So I kind of figured he's my age. I was I think it was 40, maybe 39, 38, I don't know. And so I figured, has to be my age. He's been through all. And so until we were going out for a while, and I said, how old are you? And when he told me, I was like, oh, my God. I didn't know he was 9 years younger than I was.
Yeah, yeah.
By that time, forget it. I'm already having feelings for him.
Yes,
so.
yeah.
So that really, he would make me laugh. And I had such a hard life. I wouldn't laugh. I'd cry more than I'd laugh. So when he started respecting me, making me laugh, and he was really good to me. Everything.
Yes.
He would buy me anything I wanted. He was very romantic. So, of course, I couldn't give him up. I never had anybody treat me like that.
Yes,
so.
yeah. The way you should have been treated.
Yeah.
Yes, from the very beginning.
He was real good, and then we finally, because he was ignoring the girls, they were staying with his mom a lot. Well, that's where he lived. And so he said, we're going to do this. We need to move together. So we did. We found a place to rent. And then we decided to move. I didn't want to move to San Antonio, but he did. And I'm like, I don't want to go. I was scared. Mm-hmm. I've always been scared of new things, right? So finally, my job was going through a lot of changes. And I was kind of thinking, I hope they don't lay me off. So that kind of pushed me to apply for jobs up here. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I finally got an opening, and I got it, and I came up here, and then he stayed behind, and then he moved. And we moved in with our friends, John and Tia, and we stayed with them for a couple of months until we found our own place. At that time, my daughter was still living with me, my older daughter. Mm-hmm. She always stayed with me. So, but she worked, and she gave me $500 for rent, and she
helped out, yeah.
She had to be responsible, or she couldn't stay.
Yeah.
So, and we all moved as a family and everything, and when we moved up here, I said, okay, now we got to do something. We're already up here. We've already made this commitment. So
yes,
then
yeah.
And we had already bought the rings and everything. And so he says, okay, let's do it. So we decided to do it on the steps of the courthouse with Valentine's Day. But there was going to be a freeze that night, and it was going to be super cold. I said, man, I don't know if I want to be out there. It's going to be cold.
Yes, yeah.
And I said, and then all the people that show up, I said, okay, let's do the first one late at night because maybe there won't be a lot of people. Well, that Friday I was getting ready for work. It was going to be on a Saturday, Valentine's Day. Mm-hmm. And so that Friday I was getting ready for work, and I saw this announcement. They said this church, Travis United Methodist, I think it's called. They were doing one of those mass weddings too.
Yes.
In the church. I said, oh my God. I said, well, we wanted to get married in the church. Let's do that instead. That was the only year that I've seen they've offered
that
it.
they've done that, yeah.
So I think it was God. So we got up and we got dressed, and we left the kids with his mom. We didn't tell nobody because we didn't want to leave anybody out, and we didn't want nobody to get mad. So I think only my daughter knew. So we went. Well, we couldn't go. We woke up, we started getting ready, and they closed all the freeways because it iced down really bad.
Oh, no.
So we're like, oh, my God. And so he started calling all the churches in Universal City. I didn't know that the Potter's house was there, and I don't know. He just said, I'm going to call all these churches and see if they can marry us. And so everybody kept telling him, no, you're not a member. No, you're not a member. So I said, well, call that church. Ask them if maybe they're going to postpone it for another day. So he called, and they said, no, we're not going to postpone it. He said, but we'll wait for you. He goes, and you don't need to take the freeway. And they told him how to get there. So we got there. And then once there was like 22 couples.
Oh, wow.
And so once we got there, the lady goes, has that couple from Universal City gotten here? And we're like, yeah. So we filled out the paperwork, and we got ready, and they split us. And did the whole wedding, the lighting of the candle, the blessing of the rings. I couldn't stop crying enough to say the words.
Oh.
So we got married there, and I know when everybody found out, they were all mad. But it's like, that's the only way we could do it because we didn't have the funds to have an actual wedding.
Sometimes,
and we didn't have a church.
Yeah.
So we got married through that. So that's how we started our marriage. And I can't say we had our differences because of the girls. I was wanting to raise him the Christian way, and he still wasn't saved yet. So that was our battle,
Yes, yeah.
And me telling him, no, you can't let him do that. No, they can't do this. And he would get upset because he didn't understand.
Yeah.
And so, but other than that, I can say he always took good care of me. So I miss him now, but
Take your time.
for the most part, it was good.
Yes.
We had some good times, real good times. And until he got sick, another struggle. Well, he got sick first, and then and my daughter always stayed with us. And because we were buying a house, and I told her, are you going to stay with us? Because I don't want to buy a 4-bedroom. You're not going to stay with us because you're going to pay your part. Yes, I'm going to stay with you. Well, 6 months until we bought the house, she decided to leave.
Oh, no.
Oh, my God. Anyway, it was okay. She went to go stay with her brother. And I think that's where she went to stay with Milo. And so I didn't know much about her, but Noelle got sick. And so... and of course, I had my little surgeries in between too. So I don't know. I think she went over there, and of course, she gave me problems too. I went through stuff with her. She she was our babysitter, our permanent babysitter, because she lived there. She would take care of the girls when we go out to Corpus. Mm-hmm. One day we went out there, and I think it was Lulu who called me, and she goes, I know it was the girl. Sarah called me. She goes, Mom, we're afraid. We're by ourselves. I said, what? Where is Arlene? And she's like, she's not here. She lived with some guy, and she's not here. And it was dark.
Oh, no.
It's like, oh, my God. So I call Lulu. Lulu, please go pick up the girls. Where is Arlene? Well, Lulu and Milo knew that she had taken a friend to some jail, some federal prison. And, oh, my God, what's the name of that place up there in Texas? I forget. Anyway, so she was taking him to a federal prison, and they found a bag of marijuana, the debris. So guess what? She got locked up. And my kids are over here by themselves, and I'm in Corpus.
Oh, no.
Yes, but Lulu, thank God they went and got him, and we came back. And so she got into that trouble. Mm-hmm. So she gave me her own problems, because then I found I was also doing drugs and struggling, and like, oh, my God. And then she got hooked up with this guy. They say her boyfriend. I don't call him her boyfriend, but she never really had a boyfriend. So when this guy paid her attention, she,
clung on to that.
And so she met him working with Milo in one of the moving companies. And then little did I know, he was a drug addict, didn't want to work, only worked here and there to get money to buy drugs. So, of course, she was working, so he was using her. And then that was another heart. thing I had to deal with her because she come at work and knock on my window crying, and I don't have money to pay rent. And I said, well, where's David? She said, he left. He said he'd come back when I take care of things. I was like, oh, that was another struggle. But needless to say, in 2011, he murdered her. So that was a hard news. That was another hard thing when he, they told me. I remember I was mad at her because she had left, and the girls were at home for Christmas break, and my daughter calls me and says, Mom, there's cops knocking on the door. What do I do? I said, just don't answer the door. You're fine. You know, if they don't know anybody's there, they'll go away. So she said, okay. So she hangs up. She calls me back 10 minutes and said, Mom, they're knocking on the window. They're looking through the window. I said, just don't open the door. I said, but there's cops everywhere. And I'm like, oh, my God. And I had just gotten back because I had surgery. I didn't want to leave, so I called Noel, and I was like, I can't leave. I'm busy. And, well, he was closer. So I said, okay, forget it. So I told my boss, I have to go. So I take off, and I'm talking to Camilo. I said, where's your sister? He's like, I don't know. She goes, why? Because she left the house. I'm like, what? She's not living with me no more. And I'm like, oh, my God. I said, she goes, why? I said, I don't know what your sister did, but I'm so mad at her because the cops are at my house now, and the girls are there. And I said, I don't know what she's getting into or what she got into with this guy. I said, I was mad at her. I was so mad that she was bringing this to my house.
Yes, yeah.
And so my brother says, well, my son says, well, tell me when you get there what happened, what's going on. And I said, okay. So we hung up, and then right after I hung up, the cops called me and told me, you know, Ms. Crossland, we need to talk to you. Can we go meet you? And I said, no, I'm already on my way home. He says, okay, we'll wait for you. And I get there, and, you know, they were all gone. It was just like 4 investigators, and they took me. He goes, can we go in the house? And I go, yeah. So they was telling me, I don't know if you saw the news this morning, the only day I didn't watch the news.
Oh,
I had a
no.
doctor's appointment
Yeah.
that morning. And I wouldn't have known because she wasn't identifiable at the time.
Right, yeah.
So anyway, and he told me, well, we found a body, and we believe it's your daughter, you know, fingerprints, because she had a record.
Yeah.
So with her fingerprints, they found her right away. That's how they ended up at my house. So when he's telling me, do you know anybody who might want to hurt her? And I don't know anything, you know. And so I knew about that guy David, but I told him I don't think it was him because they had split up, apparently. That's what I understood. So I said, well, maybe my son, because I think she was living with him, so they hang out. So I call Camilo, and I tell him, your sister's dead. I said, you need to come quick. The cops want to talk to you. So he gets there, and it hadn't hit me. You know, I was shocked, but it hadn't hit me till he walked in the room. Girl,
Yeah.
I fell apart, and I went to hug him, and I couldn't even breathe. I was crying so hard. And so I finally calmed down, and we sat down, and the cops were asking him, well, what do you know? And so he started telling them, well, I think it was this person. And I'm like, are you sure? And he's like, yeah, I think so. And so and that's when it hit me, and I said, she just bought a car 2 weeks ago. I said, and he goes, where? And I said, I think it's from Mansira, and it has a GPS tracker because she had bad credit. Mm-hmm. And so they right away got on the phone to Mansira, and he took the car. So they tracked him.
Well, good.
So, and they finally found him. And, well, he had killed someone else before. He killed her. So we were glued to the TV to see what would happen. And so they caught him. But they only mentioned that other guy's murder, not my daughter's, which was okay. And then they called me and said, we've got him, but we haven't found the weapon. So we can't trace him to your daughter's yet. So we're praying, God, help them find a gun, because it was real late at night.
Yeah.
And so the next morning he called me, and he says, we found a gun. I said, well, praise God, because we were praying. He goes, we were too bad, we were too. So anyway, they found the gun, and then it took 2 more weeks before they could even tie him to my daughter's murder, which we knew was him. He was in our car.
Right. Yeah. It was just kind of
And,
like you just have they just have to gather all the evidence.
Yeah. So, and they had the gun. So 2 weeks later, they finally called me and said, okay, we can go ahead and charge him with your daughter's murder. That was the hardest thing ever. Then it was during the holidays. Nobody wanted it. I didn't have the money to bury her. She didn't have any insurance. So we're like, how are we going to do this? And Mino's like, well, Mom, I'll help you. I'll help you with half. And I go, half of what? We don't even know what kind of amount we're dealing with.
Yes, yeah.
So I don't know. I was just like, well, I always rely on God. So next thing you know, I called my boss, and we were real close, and I told her, and there was a girl that worked with us there. She used to work for the city public service, and so I guess she knew everything. She called me the next morning. She goes, look, I've already called the Crimes Victims Unit. I've told them everything. They're going to send you an advocate. They're going to fill out your paperwork. You get $4,500 automatically. And I'm like, well, golly, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So, but that was a big help. So I told them, well, we start calling them funeral homes because they told us that when they released her, I needed to have something ready. And
Yes,
I'm like, oh my God. I'm like panicking. And so we started calling places. Some were closed because during the holidays. He murdered her on the 29th of December. So I call a few places and, oh no, we don't want to deal with it. We've dealt with the crimes victims and we don't want to deal with them. And I mean, it was all about the money. They were cruel. And I'm crying. I told them I can't deal with this. You need to find someone to take that money. And so, and then I said, oh, you know what? Call where your mom was buried at the Mission Cemetery. Well, God sent us an angel. When he answered the phone, oh my God. And he just says, I will take you. Come on over tomorrow. We'll discuss everything.
Oh,
he goes, I've dealt with them. He goes, and I don't have an issue with that. And so I didn't know that my group was fundraising for me back at work.
Yes, yeah.
So needless to say, I got that 45, and then my coworkers raised like 17. Then my unit from Corpus
they were doing it too.
By the time I get through with all the money the people were handing me, I buried her and even had money left over.
Praise
and that's
God.
because I got the plot. Mm-hmm. We did flowers, the book, everything. We paid everything. Again, and I knew that was God.
Yes, yeah.
Because I wouldn't have been able to do it. And I couldn't find a pastor to come and do it because I had left Corpus. And so I had told Noel, because he worked with Rick, I said, you think you can ask your friend if his pastor will come? Pastor Ben?
Yes, yeah.
And then I didn't know who Pastor Ben was, but he says, yeah, I'll talk to him. And so Rick had, I guess, talked to Pastor Ben. Well, it was January.
Oh, conference.
And so he says, well, I'll do it, but if we didn't know what date they were going to release her body, he says, if it's during conference, I can't. So I'm praying, please, please. Well, yeah, no, they didn't release it till January 11th, so he couldn't. So needless to say, I was like, what am I going to get? So I was talking to my girlfriend in Arlington, who was back in my church in Corpus. Her husband they had to be ordained in the Assemblies of God to do weddings, whatever. And so she says, Carlos can do it. And I said, what? She goes, yeah, we'll come down. He goes, well, how much more to do it? Because he was their Sunday school teacher growing up.
Yeah.
So they came down and said, oh, thank you, God, for helping me find a minister or a pastor. He wasn't a pastor. He was a youth minister at the time. Mm-hmm. So they flew down, and he did the service, and everything turned out beautiful.
Nice.
So that was that. And I'm like, I can't deal with it anymore. I said, this is it. I had already gone through a lot. So, and then when the well got cancer, I said, God, I can't.
It was just one more load. One more load.
But the first time it was nothing. They operated on him, and it was stage 0. He didn't need treatments or anything. So it was great. The second time, again, it's like, oh my God. So this time it was stage, I don't know if it was 3 or 4, I don't remember. And he was like, did you see how the doctors looked at me like I had no chance? And I'm like, he's not God. You have to rely and have faith. He would always jump into those conclusions. So it's like, no, we have to keep praying. So that time, he did have the chemo. I retired to be with him. Another tight trip because we didn't have but my income. We had just bought a house. We had a mortgage. So, but we made it. And he would tell me, we're going to lose the house. Don't say that. I said, don't confess that. I said, we're not going to lose the house.
Were you going to a church at this? Obviously, you weren't going to our church, but were you going to a church at the time?
No, we were going to.
Oh, you were going to?
The only church I've ever gone to here is the Potter's
Oh,
House.
so you were going to our church.
Yes,
oh, okay.
I had Pastor Will, and Pastor Will is the one who helped me bring Milo into the church. He dealt with Milo and with Lulu. He helped me there, and then he would come and pray for Noel. He'd go see him at the hospital. And yeah.
So how did you start going to the church?
Because of Rick.
Because of Rick. Yeah. Oh, okay.
Rick.
Okay.
After that, he would tell Noel. Noel was had a lot of anger sometimes, And so he would tell him, that's what he was saying, that he would tell him, you're like a vampire. You suck all of the, I forgot what he said anyway.
The joy out of everything.
Yeah, so that's one day he said he just got fed up and he came home. He walked in the door. He says, we're going to church. He goes, if you all want to go to church, you all need to get us. I said, no. Back up. Get dressed. We're all going to church. So that's why I think the girls didn't like me. So he turned around and he says, get dressed. We're going to church. Because if you leave it up to them, they're not going to go. The kids are,
they're like, I'm going to stay home and sleep.
So we
watch
went,
TV.
and I was so happy because I had, before Noah was saved, him and Milo would drink cases of beer. Oh, my God. They would drink and drink. And he would pass out, and I'd be there laying hands on him. And I'd lay hands and pray, God, please, change him, touch him. And I guess it worked.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah, so he did finally came home and said, and I was so happy. And we had already visited Grace. We had been to Living Way. And I was like, this is not where I want to be.
Yeah.
And he says, you don't like any churches. You're never going to find a church. I said, God will let me know when I find the right church. So when we walked in, the minute we walked into that church and I made the little corner around the thingies,
little wall.
It was not that many people there, but I felt the Holy Spirit. And I said, this is where I want to be.
This is
and
where
he
God
looks at
wants
me like
us.
he didn't know the Spirit yet, the Holy Spirit yet. So it's like, this is where we're meant to be. And so when they did altar call, oh my God. Well, because when I met Noah, I started drinking with him. But I wouldn't drink, but I would drink.
Yeah.
He would make me like strawberry. I only would drink like strawberry margaritas, strawberry daiquiris, and I wasn't a drinker.
The frou stuff.
But I knew my limits when to stop because I didn't like getting drunk. But so I was drinking and stuff. But I always laid hands on him and prayed for him because he was not a good drunk. He was not a beater. He wouldn't beat me or anything, but he was not a good drunk.
Yeah, it was just, yeah.
So needless to say, when he came home to tell me that, I was like, oh, my God, thank you, Jesus. So when we started going to church, my daughter had just passed 6 months. So the first altar call, I just laid it all out to the altar. I cried. And then I think the people were like looking at me like, this lady doing? Because I was really crying.
Yes, yeah.
I just lost my daughter.
Yeah.
So afterwards, Pastor Wills was like, hey, we're all going out to Pizza Hut. Do y'all want to join us? He goes, it's on me. And I'm like, okay, well, we'll go. And then I sat with Norma and I started telling her. And she goes, oh, my God. I said, sorry that I just kind of started crying out. But so they supported me. And they told me, if you ever need anything, you need us to sit in court with you. When they do the trial or whatever, we'll be there for you. Well, it never got to that.
Yeah.
It never got to that. The way they explained it to me is they do like 6 meetings with the attorneys and all that. Mm-hmm. And they share all the evidence. And if they feel like they can win it, well, they'll go to court. And if not, well, they'll plead guilty. They will do a guilty plea. Mm-hmm. So they exhausted and one day they finally called me like years later and told me he's plead guilty for both.
Oh, good.
So then they told me, so are you going to want the death penalty or,
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Or do you want without parole, what do you call it?
Life without parole?
Life sentence without parole. And so it's like, at that time, I kind of like, I don't know, want to kill somebody. I felt like, I don't know if I want to murder somebody like that. Yeah. I was not sure about it. So, against the other family was first because I think he hit that man first. So I said, well, I would say life without parole, but I don't know what that other family's going to pick. Well, they picked the same thing. So he pleaded. So no court hearing or anything. He's just locked up for life.
So just time, yeah.
He's locked up for life. So that was, and then I had to deal with Noel's cancer for 10 years. And he, second time, they all were always praying for him at the harvesters, all the pastors. So he went into remission, which was great. And then they found that Keytruda, and they said, no, we're going to start giving you Keytruda. Say, we'll come back. Well, we bought the house, this second house. And that's another miracle. My first house, I always prayed for a house. I never thought I would own the house because we didn't really have the money.
Yeah.
So the first house was another blessing so they pay the closing costs because the builder always pays when it's a new home. So I knew we could get that, but the down payment back in the day was like maybe 4,000, I think, and the house was like 129. So I said, "How are we going to come up with that kind of money?" He says, "God's going to provide." And I said, "Okay." So we signed papers, everything. They're building the house. We got to pick a few things, and so I'm still worrying how we're going to pay the down payment.
Yes.
So after we signed the papers, we were leaving, and the lady calls us, "Y'all need to come back." And I said, "Why?" "Well, Obama just signed in a bill that we're giving $5,000 for all new home buyers or whatever." That was the $5,000 that helped pay for the down.
Nice.
And a new house, because I tell him, no, I want a new. I would pray and I say, "God, I want a new house, because I can't afford a used house, and I can't afford a payment and a repair."
Right. Yeah. If
We didn't have that, and so I would pray, and I was specific, and I got a new house. So praise God again, because that was a miracle in itself.
Yes.
So then, of course, all the girls, we went through a lot of things with Milo, Lulu, and the girls in that house. We went through a lot. So when everybody left us, and we were just me and Noel, it's like Noel would study a lot, and he would seek God a lot. So one day he told me, God spoke to me, and he said, "We have to sell the house." I'm like, "No." Like,
no.
We got into it, and I was crying.
Yes.
We didn't even go to church that morning. I cried. I said, "I want to sell my house, and this is my house. We work hard for it." And
Yes.
the Holy Spirit said, "We sell this house. God's going to place us in a new land." And so I told Milo, "What do? I don't want to sell my house." And he's always wanting to sell the house because he says, "We can't afford it." And Milo says, "Mom, then you need to get on your knees and you need to pray and ask God." So I said, "Okay." So I did. And then I said, well, I didn't believe we could get enough for the house for what we needed. So I said, "Okay, get the realtor to come. And if he can sell it and we can profit what we need to profit to pay off the debt," because we had a lot of medical, "we'll sell. And if we can't get enough," I said, we'll stay." So he called a realtor, and he looked at the house. He goes, "Oh, I'll sell this house in 3 weeks. It's brand new." We'd been there 9 years. But I always took care of it. We had just painted it. We had just done the floors. We put laminate around all the flooring, and we had all new carpet in the bedrooms because we were going to plan to stay there.
Yeah.
So how were we not going to sell the house? Well, it took us 7 months, believe it or not. Because Noah was praying. I said, "Would you stop asking for things?" He goes, "I'm praying and asking God to send us the right people, that they're not going to shortchange us, and they're not going to want to negotiate it." And And sure enough, the lady that bought the house bought it.
She just bought it. Praise
and so
God.
we got a lot more than what we thought.
Praise
So we
God.
got out of that house, went into the apartments, and I hated it. I hated it so bad because I had neighbors upstairs.
Oh,
and
yes.
neighbors downstairs. And it's horrible because being in the house 9 years.
Yes. Yeah. No, you like your space.
So it's
you're
like
quiet.
I would cry and I said, "I want out," but we don't have the money because we pay we have money, but it's a lot for a down and for the closing costs.
Yes. Yeah. Everything has gone up over
So
the years.
I would cry and I said, "God, it's going to take a miracle from you for me to get another house." I said, "You know it." I said, "So you're going to have to be the one to do all because we don't really have it." So I was getting after Noel because our lease was coming up. And I said, "We're only going to sign one more lease." I said, "You better start saving money," because he was a spender. I said, "We need to move, so you need to start saving money." And so he's like, okay, we'll sign one more lease. And this was like a March, and we had to sign the lease in May. So he comes home, and he says, "Guess what?" And he goes, "I was driving by the subdivision, and the Holy Spirit here. This is where we need to come." And I said, "You're crazy. We don't have no money." He says, "We have to go. The Holy Spirit said that's where we need to go." So it's like, okay, we had a healing crusade at Alex and Lauren's old house.
Yes.
So after that, we came to the house, and so I sat down and I listened to what the guy was saying. I told him, "Well, this is the amount I want to spend. I don't want to pay more than this much for my because I wanted a limit to where if something happened to him, I could afford it."
Yes. Absolutely.
So we wanted a small house. We started with 1215, 3 bedrooms. And so he showed us and said, "Yeah, we can do that, and we can do the payments." And so I said, "Well, okay, so I know that the builder can pay the closing, but what about my down payment? I have money in the bank." I said, "But I don't want to spend it. I want to use it for my house." So he's like, "Well, have you ever heard of the USDA loan?" I'm like, "No." And I said, "What are the qualifications?" And he told me, I said, "We qualify." So I never had heard of anything like that. And I had asked people, and nobody had heard of it. but that was God.
Yes, yeah.
So we fill out all the paperwork. It never did. I thought I was going to get another house right there and then. Brand new again, built and everything. 2 great gifts from God there too. So that was all God. I paid no down. I paid no closing costs. I gave $1,000 earnest money.
Yep, earnest money, yeah.
And then when we signed the paperwork, we got it back.
Yep.
So I moved in with no money.
Praise God.
And I have a 2.75.
Nice. Yeah, right.
So that was all God. I tell everybody, there's no way that would have happened if it wasn't God.
Yeah.
So now I have my home and I'm happy. And I tell them, well, this is our forever home till we go be with the Lord.
Yes.
And so not even, 4 or 5 months later, he comes home and he says, I need chemo again. I'm like, not again. I don't want to go through this again. We had just caught up in the medical and I said, I don't want to be here by myself. And so he's like, you're going to be fine. You're going to be fine. And that was we had to start all over. Then COVID hit. And the good part was I would go with him and I would tell because my husband would just start talking and he'd forget. And I was the one that would always tell the devil, well, what about this? What about that? Why is he doing this? Why is this happening to him? Well, can't we do this? Because, I would read and stuff. Well, when COVID hit, I couldn't go in with him.
You couldn't go in with him?
I couldn't go in with any of his doctors. And I hated that because I knew he wasn't telling them what needed to be said. Or did I trust that he was telling me what they were telling him?
Yeah.
Because he didn't want me to feel bad. So, after that, things just started going bad. And so I would pray and I got to heal him. But then the more I saw him get sick, I thought I would tell Lulu, I know God's going to heal him. But my fear is he going to heal him here? Or is he going to heal him by taking him to heaven? That's my fear. And so more and more, I think God was showing me that he was going home. But I was still counting that he would heal him.
Yeah, you still want him.
Yeah, I wanted him here. But he knew, because he would always throw little things like, you're going to be fine. And that's why he was rushing to paint the house, paint the fence. He wanted everything because he felt he was running out of time.
Yeah.
And he would push the guys, Jesse and Casey, no, we got to paint the fence. No, we got to do this. And he wanted to paint the garage, all that, but he didn't have time for all that. Yeah. Or even the shed. He didn't get to paint the shed. And I was like, why are you rushing? We have the rest of our lives. But he knew. He just wouldn't tell me.
Yeah.
So, and I prayed. And even when he was in the hospital, I would get mad at God. And I would tell him, I wouldn't get mad, but I would tell him I still loved him and I would always serve him. And so.
You're just venting. You're venting.
I did. I would do that a lot with God. So, when he passed, I was so angry. I was very angry because he didn't heal him. And so, but at the same time, I knew that he wasn't suffering. He went through a lot. I was the only one that would see what he went through every day. And he would go to work. He'd get up, and he had a struggle, but he'd get dressed. He'd go to work. He was so swollen. He hated that his clothes wasn't fitting him because of his edema. He had a lot of things going on. And even though I was mad, at the same time, I knew he was in a better place. So I had my ups and downs. But I did get mad, and I was getting mad at God, and I was letting him know how angry I was. I even told Pastor, I said I was so mad at him, but I did tell him I still love you, and I will always serve you, but I'm still angry because he took my husband home, and I wanted him. And he was just, we had such good times, Once we were empty nesters, we did everything. And one thing about my husband that I don't see in other men, he loved shopping. You saw how he would dress.
Oh, I loved his shirts, man. I used to look forward to when he'd walk in. I'm like, what loud, obnoxious shirt are you going to be wearing today, Mr. Noel? I loved it.
He loved shopping. Like, he'd go to Walmart. Sometimes I didn't even have to grocery shop. He'd do it all himself,
Nice.
So that's one thing I loved about him. He was unusual. He would talk always. We were always talking. And I never had a dull moment with him, And Miss Leah was telling me the other day that she was having a hard time getting around, and she thought of him. goes, what would Mr. Noel say? He would
Yes.
say, no, Miss Leah, this and that. And I'm like, yeah, that was him. And then one day she was telling me and her mom, oh, I miss Mr. Noel. He was so funny. I loved his jokes. And me and Mal looked at each other like, they were kind of corny. And she said, well, I thought they were funny. And I'm like, yeah. Some of his jokes were corny.
They were corny, but they were the dad jokes that, yes,
Yeah.
you'd go, you'd roll your eyes, go, oh, brother, but you'd still laugh and you remember them.
Yeah.
You remember them, yes.
So,
yeah.
but yeah, I mean, he set a high standard. I said, some of the ladies at work would tell me if I was like wanting to remarry. I said, no, my husband set standards so high no one could ever meet him.
Yeah.
I will never be able to be happy with anyone else.
Yeah.
I said, I'm okay right now. I said, I just, his memories, my
Yes,
love
yeah.
for him. And that's all I want to be with right now.
Yeah.
I miss him tremendously, but have a lot of good memories. I
Yes,
do.
absolutely. Yes.
Yes.
How was it? How was it when you guys were in church, and then when Camilo and Lulu started coming in? How was that for you guys?
That was hard too because I've always known Lulu. I mean, they got together, and I told Lulu, you know what, Lulu, since the minute I met you, I knew you were the one that God had sent you. She goes, how did you know that? I said, I don't know. Something just told me in my spirit that you were it. But they didn't stay together. They had some issues. They broke up because he didn't want to work, and he was trying to not pay child support sometimes. But that was young Camilo, and he was, in his right mind. But because I think a lot of men in the world, when they get divorced, they don't want to pay their wives child support because they feel like they're going to spend it on themselves, not on the kids. That's how I feel. Like that's how my ex used to think.
Look at you, yeah.
Because when we went to court one time for the child support, that's what he asked the judge. He says, why can't I make the check out to my son? What do I have to make it out to her?
Oh, no.
And the judge goes like, your son is underage. That check needs to go to her, and she needs to distribute it how she sees fit. So I think a lot of men think like that. So anyway, so they broke up. As a matter of fact, I think of Lulu and I said, Lulu, why did you put up with him so much? Because I think she had told me he wasn't working, and he was living with her and her mom. And he wouldn't work, and she'd get up, go to school and work. So I said, how did you tolerate him? But I knew that God already had plans for them.
Yes, yeah.
So they broke up, and then one day we were renting a house in Corpus, and there was a knock on my door, and I opened the door, and there's this girl there. And she goes, hi. And I said, hi. And then she's like just talking to me. I'm like, who is this girl? And so she hands me, she goes, I want to bring you an invitation to my graduation for associates. And I look at it, and I see the name. I said, oh, Lulu. And then, we went to her graduation at Del Mar. And so after that, I don't remember what happened, but one day Milo had moved up here because he was trying to get away from his drug friends, and didn't work. So because he kept going back on the weekends, got stabbed really bad, and almost lost him.
Yeah.
And he said, I went to go see him, and he said, oh, Lulu just left. I said, what? Lulu's back in the picture. And he's like, yeah, I think she's going to move with me over in San Antonio when she graduates. And yeah, so then they finally got back together, and I was so happy. Well, when my daughter died, Milo got worse in the drugs. I think he felt guilty. And I don't know why, because he was in the world, you don't know how to process it correctly.
Yes, yeah.
And so I think he turned into heavier drugs. And so it caused more friction, and Lulu was pregnant. And so I remember Lulu calling me and saying, Milo left. And I said, what? She says, yes, he left me. Oh, my God. It's like, no way, Lord. There cannot be a Lulu and Milo. There's no way. So that was another trial we went through with him. And so Lulu would call me crying. So we're there crying because I'm a crybaby. So we're both crying. And so we would talk to Milo, and Milo was I say he was demon possessed because he had the ugliest looks.
Yeah.
And he would never, my son never disrespected me. He never cussed at me. He never yelled at me. And at that time, he was moving stuff out of the house, and he would look at me like, what are you looking at me? And why are you looking at me like that? I'm like, whoa, I was so scared of him.
That wasn't,
And
yeah,
said,
that wasn't him.
That's not my son. And I would look at Noel. And so anyway, a lot of things happened because he moved in with me. They split up. So he stayed with me, and he was just paranoid. He thought that he said somebody was out to kill him. I don't know, because I didn't know his real whole life story.
Right, yeah.
When I hear all his testimonies, I learned new stuff. I said, what?
Every time.
So I didn't know a lot of things. Like, I didn't know he wanted to kill Lulu, shoot Lulu, or whatever. I didn't know that. I just knew that he wanted to go kill somebody. And I didn't know all that was happening, but he came and stayed with us in the beginning. And then so he didn't trust us. He would say that somebody was out to kill him and that I had part in it. And that I was hiding somebody in the attic. And so sometimes I would cook and he'd come and eat. And then he would stop eating. And then later on, I found out it was because he thought I was trying to poison him. And I mean, because all the drugs and everything.
Yeah,
he was going through so much. And I was so scared because he wasn't in his right mind.
Yeah.
And then one day, me and Noel were in the bedroom watching TV, and he was in his room, and the girls, and he just swings open the door, and somebody's in the house. And I'm like, there's nobody in the house. And it scared me, and I got up. We both got up, and I go, where? And he says, he went in there in Audrey's room. I said, what? So we opened the door, and Audrey's like, what's going on? He goes, he went out the windows. The window's closed, it's locked, the blinds are down. I saw him go through that, and he was just going off, and I was scared, and so Noel was upset because he was scaring the girls.
Yes, yeah, no, those are his
so
kids.
Noel started getting into it with him, and then he started fighting with him. He goes, you know what, you just need to leave, and then I'm going to call the cops on you, and then it got bad, and then he called the cops, and I didn't want him to leave because he wasn't in his right mind. So he says, I'll leave. He told, but never did my kids ever tell Noel, don't tell me what to do. You're not my dad. They never talked back to him. So he just got his stuff, and he says, I want to leave. And I said, no. And he says, yes, I have to leave because I think I have a warrant, and they'll take me in. So he got in his truck, and I'm like, I was crying like he had died. Then he goes, Mom, why are you crying so ugly? I said, because that's how I felt.
Yes,
something was going to happen to him because he wasn't in his right mind. So the cops got there, and he just took off, and I'm crying, and I called Pastor Will. I need you. It was 2 o'clock in the morning. He had to be in work at 6, but I wasn't thinking that. And he came out, and he he told me, I told him Noel was going berserk. He was mad, and he's out there with the cops, and he's throwing him out, and I'm afraid he's going to hurt himself. So Pastor was like, I'm coming. So he showed up, and by the time he showed up, my son had taken off, and Noel was with the cops. He was trying to calm Noel down, and then he came in, and he's telling me, and I'm like, when he's talking to Noel in the house, Camilo calls me. He says, Mom, I'm going to kill myself. I can't do it. And he's telling me he's going to kill himself, and I'm crying drastically, and I'm saying, God, I just lost my daughter. I can't lose my son as well. So I'm crying, and so Pastor Will says, what's going on? And I said, he's calling me. He says he's going to kill himself. And he says, get his number, or give me his number and give him my name. Tell him I'm going to call him. I'm going to call him, and I need to talk to him. So I told him, I said, look, don't do anything. He said, Pastor Will's going to call you. And so he left, and he called him, and then he called me back. He says, I'm going to meet him at a cafe or some place where they serve coffee, and I'm going to put him up in a motel or something. He put him up for 2 days, I think. I don't remember. And next day he called me, and he said, Mom, don't worry, I'm okay. He says, I went back to work, and but he was working at all these moving companies where all these guys do drugs. And so he's like, I'm back to work. I'll be fine, but I need to come pick up my stuff. And I said, okay. He goes, so I'm going to go pick up my stuff. And I said, okay. And I told him, well, I don't want you to do anything. He's coming just to pick up his stuff. So he comes in, and I'm talking to him, and of course I'm crying because I don't want him to leave. And he said, no, Mom, I got saved last night again with Pastor Will, and I'm going to be fine, and I'm going to, start going to church and all that. And so and then he starts crying. He's telling me, all I wanted was for you all to help me because I know you go to church, and I know you can help me. I don't want to do this anymore. So I said, okay, stay here. So we're going to go get Noel. And I said, he wants to talk to you. So he came in, and so Milo's telling him, I'm sorry, and da-da-da-da. And all I want is help from you guys. And so, I don't know if he started crying, and they kind of like, made up, I guess you could say. And he said, look, he goes, I just don't want any trouble from you because I have the girls. He said, you can stay here. He goes, you can stay here and we'll help you. He goes, but you have to start coming to church and you have to, accept help. Effort. Yeah. So he stayed, and he started going to church, and he was doing good. And I would tell Abraham and TJ and Pastor Will, I say, y'all need to call him every day. Call him through the day. Give him scriptures, text him scriptures.
Yeah.
So, yes, Miss Pat. So they would check up on him. So he was doing good, and then he decided to go get his own place again. It's like, oh, my God. So he went out, and it started again. I think he started using again. So one night he calls me. He says, Mom, call the cops. And I said, why? He says, there's somebody in my attic going to kill me. I said, are you sure? He goes, yes. Call the cops and tell them. And I'm like, what am I doing? I don't know, because what if it's for real? I mean, how do I know?
Yeah,
so I said, are you sure? Yes, Mom. And so he gave me the address, and I called the cops, and I told the lady, I just got a call from my son. He said, someone's in his attic, and they're trying to kill him. I said, I can tell you if it's for real or not, but I need somebody to go out there and check it out. So they sent a cop, and he called me back. Because they told me, do you want to call back? And I said, yes. So, there was nothing.
There's nothing there.
So, again, so we went through that again. But he came back into the church. And then Lulu started coming. And he would sit right here. And then she would sit over here.
On the other side, opposite sides of you.
And he would always tell me, why do you always pick her side? Because they lived way out there in Culebra. Mm-hmm. And so for her to come to church, it was a lot of driving. And she had the baby. Like, Alyssa was a baby, like months. And so she would tell me, said, okay, if I stay here, like for night service. I said, yeah, you can stay. You can even come spend the night Saturday night. And so she would. I loved it because I had my grandkids.
Yes, you got to see your grandbabies. And so
he would always tell me, why do you always pick her side? And you're always helping her. I said, I'm not picking sides. I have to take care of my grandbabies too. And so anyway, some girl was after him, and he was seeing her and or he wasn't seeing her, but she would always go to him, and of course man's not gonna say no. So anyway, and she would call me crying, and I'd be crying. I said, Lily, you need to come to church. So she did start coming to church, and then he would sit here, and she would sit here, and he was ugly to her. He was ugly, but God took care of that. He started working them both, and then she was praying, and he was praying, and we had a revival with Pastor Luis, I believe it was, and he gave him work. And then after that, I remember we went home, and Lulu came running in, and she goes, can you take care of the kids? And I go, yeah. She goes, Mila wants to talk to me. And I said, okay. She was all excited. And I said, okay, sure. So they took off. And then when they came back, she goes, he wants to work things out. And she was crying. I said, oh, I thank God. And so they got back together, and they got married in the church. And the rest is history.
The rest is history.
They're pastoring.
Now he's pastoring, yeah.
And I praise God because my family's in the church.
Yes.
My granddaughter came back into our lives, which I always knew, because when Milo surrendered and married, I said, okay, now it's Mari's turn. I said, we're going to put her on the list, and we're going to believe God's going to bring her. And sure enough, she came. And then she married, and I have my babies. Yes. So I have all my family in the church, and I'm so happy. I love that, to see that God has blessed me with my family in the church.
Yes, absolutely.
And I'm very proud of them.
Yes.
I'm proud because I know one day they'll be doing their own thing in their church.
Yes, amen.
I know God's preparing them for that. And then, of course, my son and Lulu and my grandkids.
Yep, everything that God's doing there in Live Oak and everything, yeah.
And I always would say, I brought my babies up in the church from the time he was 4 till, I think he was in middle school when he left. But I wanted that for my grandkids.
Yes.
And I saw it.
Yes.
My baby girl was months. And now Posey.
Yep.
My little Posey is already speaking in tongues.
Oh, I love when she does that. And when she sings, especially the song No, what is it?
No one.
Yeah, no one. And she's like,
She's
no.
just, and she does her little head.
Yeah, she'll do this. She stands. She'll stop playing. She'll stop playing with her toys, and she looks at the TV. Toy. Yeah, and she goes, no.
Yeah.
But it just goes to show the power of prayer.
Oh,
the power of prayer.
Yes.
Like you may not know everything that your kids are going through.
Yeah.
I know when I was out in the world, my mom and dad were praying and praying and praying. And yeah, the power of prayer, because you can't make your kids do anything.
No.
But
Only
only God. And so sometimes you have to just let them go, that tough love. And
Yes.
you just let God deal with them, and you just pray. You don't
Yes.
stop, you know what I mean? You don't stop
No,
loving them,
never
but
stop.
you contend, and you just give them to God, because God loves them more than us. As much as we love them,
Definitely.
God loves them more than us. And so we think we want them to make it. Oh, God wants them to make it more than us.
Yes.
And so it's like,
And
give
I'm
it to
I'm
God.
very thankful. That's why I'll never stop serving him. I've gotten mad at him several times, but I always tell him I love him anyway.
Yes, yeah. Well, I think too, like there's a difference, right? Like you're mad in the moment and you're venting, but you're really not mad for the long haul. You
No.
know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
just like right now I'm upset and I'm venting, and yeah, I'm mad. You know what I mean? But you don't hate him. You know, it's not like this long bitter thing. You know what I mean? It's just like, this is what I'm feeling now. You're speaking out your emotions now, but it's not.
I've only gotten mad at him 2 times. The first time was when my daughter was in the band, and it was a big deal because she was in junior high. And in Corpus, we have what they call bug days, kind of like our fiesta, but
Oh,
smaller.
okay. Yeah.
It's a 2-week thing, and then they have the first Saturdays a small parade for all the junior highs, and then the second Saturday the illuminated parade for all the bigger bands.
Yeah.
And so it was her first year in the band. Again, I didn't have a car, but my mom always took me. We always went with my mom to all the parades. And so that was going to be my daughter's first year, and I was all excited. I'm going to see her in the parade, and my mom says, "We're not going." Like, what? We're not going. I was so mad, and I cried because I didn't have no other way. So I called her dad, and he says, "I'll go record her. I'll go video her, and I'll bring you the video." And I said, "Okay." I was so mad. I cried, and I said, "Why, God? I'm good. I pay my tithes. I go to church. I serve you. I do what you ask me to in your word." And I was mad. I was literally mad and yelling and crying.
Yeah.
So I went to bed that night, and I heard an audible. And I knew it was him because I couldn't wake up. And he's saying to me, "Do you love me?" And I'm like, "Oh, my God." And I knew it was God because I was scared.
Yes. Yeah.
And so I said, "Yes, Lord." And he says, "Do you love me?" I go, "Yes, Lord." He goes, "How much do you love me?" And after that, I never questioned him. And it was all my heart, mind, and soul. And so it was the first time he spoke to me, but I was so mad. I was literally throwing a temper tantrum.
Yes. Yeah.
And that was the first and only time I heard an audible. And then, of course, now with Noel, I was so mad at him, but not like that. But I was very angry.
Yeah.
But and now I think, can you send him back into somebody else's body? But I want him, but in a different body. But that's not, But I know it's not gonna happen. But I'm okay right now. I know that's a few people. I said, "Well, do you want to get married again, or pray for somebody else?" Nope. There'll be nobody again like my honey.
Yes. Yeah. No.
He's the love of my life here in this earth. And yeah, I loved him a lot.
Yes.
I miss him. There's a lot of other people, I'm sure.
No.
So,
You were his wife.
So I'm ready. I'm ready for God today because I want to see him.
I'm okay, Lord. Like, my kids and my grandkids are good. Like, well, we are gonna miss you. We're gonna miss you now. Posey needs you a little bit longer. Posey has
a lot of grandmas and grandpas. I mean, a lot of great grandmas and grandmas.
Hello, Posey.
Yes. So, is there anything else? Do you have any questions, Jesse?
Grandma, you did a great job.
Yes.
You were a wonderful host. I love the way you were able to just take us through it, and that's what we tell
There's a
people
lot.
to do. Like, hey, take us through it.
I didn't even touch my
took us
mom,
through it.
how she got saved, and all. I mean, there's just so much.
We'll do a part 2 with Miss Pat.
Oh, definitely. But I mean, for right now, I think you did a real good job showing not just your life. Yeah, good job explaining it, but you're very clear and very clear in showing the points where like this is I cried out to God. This is He answered, and it may have taken an hour, but we know the lifespan. It really this is over years. This is years of faithfulness. This is years of praying. These are years of contending. I mean, like you said, Camilo was 4 years old. Playing with toys, looking up like, be a preacher, go back to playing, and then 36.
He was in the backseat of my car. I had a pacer. I had a little pacer, and he was in the back of my pacer.
Come on.
And now 36 years, 40 years later, and he's like, oh, yeah, I'm a preacher, So that was powerful. It was really, really powerful.
Yes.
It was encouraging.
Yes.
It was encouraging, and just helps with that faith and that, unrelenting faith and trust in God, and just, tragedies, heartbreaks, life, what we call life, but the hope, the love, and all that is good through God, and that's why we consider Noel and you as well leaders, pillars,
yes,
elders, because of that wisdom, that faith, and that life experience. This was a really good one for those younger folks, for the viewers, for those who haven't gone through this yet. This was really a really good one where it's like, well, I may have not gone through this yet.
Press on, yes.
But this is what I could expect. This is what life could bring. And I could still come out on top, and I could still come out, with my Jesus. And God's word is true. His promises will come to pass. It will come to pass. And I think that's what we saw, and what we heard is just his promises coming to fruition over the years. And so I just want to thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you for having me.
I don't know if you were nervous or what, if you thought it was going to be hard. I knew it was going to be hard for me because I don't want to see Grandma cry. I was like, I don't want to see Grandma cry. I was like, I don't like seeing you cry. And for whatever reason, I don't like seeing Camilo cry. I see y'all crying. I want to start crying. I start breaking down. But
there's a lot that's gone on in our family, but a lot of good things have come out too.
Yes.
So.
Yes.
I'm grateful for it. Like you said, you got all your family from it. And, Camilo played a big part in my life as well. And he wouldn't be here without you. So, of course,
you wouldn't be here without her.
We give God all the glory, but you definitely had a part to play.
But yes, absolutely, you have a part. You had a part in that. You contending. You still like, yeah. Look now Jesse's here. Now Posey's here. Now you know what I mean. So it's like you've meant a lot to a lot of people, and you might not know it. You know what I mean. But like I said, those prayers.
Sam told me one time when we got on stage, he goes, look at all the people that are in the church because of you. Not only Milo, but look at the people he has in his church. They wouldn't be here if it weren't for you and Milo.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, I never thought of it that way.
Yeah, no, that is so true. That's so true. Yeah, because you at the time you're only thinking my kid, my son. You know what I mean? But it's like, oh no, God has other things planned too. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's like,
and all my worldly friends, I guess you could say, they know the word, but they not saved. Would tell me, oh my God, I just can't believe Milo now being pastoring and doing all that. I remember him when he was little, and I'm like, yeah. And then there was something would tell me, he's never going to leave the drugs. Once the drug addict, always the drug addict. Yeah. And I would tell him, no. I said, my Jesus will change him. He will get rid of those drugs.
And now you can tell them,
when they don't tell me anything. They're just like,
they're like, yeah, okay.
Wow, he's doing really good. And so, these are people that knew them when they were smaller and just growing up. And now they're like amazed. So they can't also say that there is not a Jesus because that's evidence.
Yes, absolutely. Right.
So,
yes.
And so they respect me. Some of them, like I say, they don't serve yet, but they do respect when they talk to me.
Keep praying for them.
About Christ. We still talk about Christ. And my coworkers who will see this.
Yep.
I'm still praying for them.
Yes.
I'm always inviting them to the revivals, although they haven't come yet. So.
Still praying and contending.
So we know there's a lot of people you could reach. There's a lot of things that you went through, but would you like to give some sort of blanket statement or speak to anyone in any specific situation, any advice, wisdom outside of what you've already said, or any words of encouragement that you'd like to close with?
Just don't give up. You serve Christ. I mean, he would do wonders for you. You know, that's like the scripture said, seek ye first the kingdom of God and all his righteousness. And that's what you stick to, because don't come into the church with demands or wishes. You come into the church to serve first and foremost. You want to come serve Christ, and He will change your life totally. And like pastors always saying, you're not gonna have no problems ever, but with Him, it's easier. You have the comfort and the peace that He gives you, and there'll always be a reason later. You'll get to see later why it all happened.
Yes.
So I'm just, never give up on your kids. Always pray.
Yes.
If they tell you, oh, they'll never be any good, if you serve Christ and you keep praying for them, it's going to happen. I'm still praying for my girls. I put them on the prayer list, and I would tell Noel, they're coming. May not be now. Look, Milo took him to be 30-something before he came back.
Yes.
I said, but I believe in faith, and they will come.
Yes.
It's just a matter of time. So
all in God's time.
Believe. Yeah, but you have to be serving.
Yes.
And be right with God, and you'll see it come.
Yes. Yeah. No.
So
Powerful. Well, just thank you again, Miss Pat. Thank you for coming. And as far as that you got from me, and like I said, I'm just Jesse. This is my other host,
Lizzie Lizard.
Thank y'all for watching another episode of Life Speaks podcast. Miss Liz, got anything to say?
Nope.
Closing
Just
statement?
thank you so much, Miss Pat.
Okay. Like, subscribe, share.
Oh, yes,
follow,
that one. Yes.
Share the links. Send it to someone you may know. Check out some of our other videos. Leave a comment. Anything like that. We're always watching and reading and responding. But that's all that we got tonight. Once again, just thank y'all so much. And thank you again, of course, Ms.
Yes.
Pat.
Thank you.
When I was born, my parents were going to a very religious Christian church, and they didn't even celebrate like Christmas or like holidays and stuff like that.
Okay.
And
Hardcore religious.
Yeah. Even my mom was like, she wanted to get us gifts, and she did one year, and that pastor made us throw the gifts away.
Hey,
How did that make you feel?
That's an L
I was
pastor.
so sad. Like I was so bummed out about that.
So I even remember one time in 8th grade, we had a football meeting at the high school, and my dad showed up all ready for church, and everybody was tripping out. So the next day at school, they were asking me like, "Why was your dad all dressed up?" And I was like, "He's a salesman. He's got to dress up."
Oh.
So,
And did they buy into it?
yeah, they just believe me, and so
You're a good liar.
yeah,
At that time.
yeah. And so I regret it now, and I wish I would have just told him, "No, we were going to church."
So when I got saved, that's when I realized, like, God helped me. God really moved in my heart, and my dad, he got saved too, and he was a lot more in my life and stuff like that. So like it was just a lot better being saved. He really touched my heart, and I knew like through God I am someone, and He loves me, and that's the most important thing.
So that's.
His parents were actually the first people to take us out. My family, we went. I remember we went to McDonald's. I
It was
remember.
meant to be.
She claims that, but I still don't believe.
I
You don't
remember.
I
claim
don't
that.
remember.
I remember because Aaron was doing pull-ups in the playground.
That's my brother. So
I'm telling you, he was still in love with football. He was, that's all he was thinking about.
So when she first came in the church, I'm gonna get into the little marriage stuff now.
Oh, okay.
When she came in the church,
He was like, I like this.
when did when did you start like catching feelings, if you know what I mean?
That was